minutes, and that will flash autoclave that. But generally, most of the time, the setting's going to stay at 121 degrees. But check that always. Make sure that your setting is right to start with. Number 2, you need to make sure this is run by water, and it's run specifically by distilled water. Now, there's a whole bunch of distilled water over in the center. There's no distilled water over here, which I'm going to have to change because I wanted to be able to show you, but they're in a jug, looks similar to when you buy a 4-liter jug of water. Distilled water is important in here because when you use distilled water, there's no minerals in that at all. The best description, or the best way I can illustrate that for you is, in my household, I have a dishwasher, which every day I am thankful for, but pots and pans and stuff like that, I still hand wash. I never dry them though. I've got a dish drain, they go in the dish drain, once they're dry, they get put away, which always leaves dishes on my sink, but that's another thing for another time, right? When I look in the dish drain, there is a buildup of what looks like a kind of grayish white substance. That's minerals, okay? There's minerals in that water. So introducing that type of water to a machine like this can, I'm going to use really simple terms, bung up the workings of this machine. Valves that need to open and close can get stuck because the right water's not in there. So distilled water is what we're always going to use in here. And where we place the distilled water in here is this here. So I'm going to lift this up, okay? And I want you to all come take a look inside. You'll see that there's water inside of there. Go have a peek in there. That's where we would actually pour the water into that area. Can you see the water in there? Okay. How do I know if there's enough water in there or not? Well, when you take a look at this, there is a maximum line and a minimum line. As long as the water is within those two, that is reasonable. I like where the water is right now. It's right in between. If it was really, really close to the minimum line, I might top it up. Most importantly, though, when you looked in here, I should have had you look when you were here, you'll see that there's a little valve that comes out the back. It's like a little circle with a little pin going forward. If you remember seeing it, good. If not, come have a look again. Because if that valve is covered, there's too much water in here, and that's going to be a big problem. If I was running this as a practical that had a fatal flaw, that would be one of them. Okay, so use this for knowing how much water needs to be in here, but always you must check, because if I don't have water in there, I'm not going to be able to get water to actually run this cycle, and I can't create steam. So I've already done this, but I've turned the main switch to on position, and you should see a green power light on here somewhere. Do you see that? Okay. Load the autoclave, and I'm following this because it's sequentially done and a very good order to learn. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put my packs in here. Now, what is important for you to see is how I load things. When you look inside of here, you see you've got a round drum. And you've got areas for shelves. As a matter of fact, when you take a look at the shelves here, you'll see they're slotted. That's even made to allow for steam to come through. Now, if I've got just a gown pack, let me just grab a couple samples over here. I have one, but I want to prove a point here. Oh, I unwrapped my gown, but... I'm going to just grab another little one of these because I have to prove a point to you. You know, you have to be very careful because when you're loading this, you don't want anything touching anything else because, again, we're working with steam and steam's ability to penetrate objects. So if I'm going to, say I've got two things like this that I want to put in the autoclave. In this size, they're not touching each other, this would be fine. But what if I've got two packs that are fairly big and they're going to bump into each other? It would be better for me to put them what they call vertically. Okay, so if I'm putting my two packs and they can't just fit singly, vertically means like that, so that there's just a minimal, it doesn't work properly. But can you see what I'm saying? There's just a minimal touching for there. But really, as much as you can, avoid anything from touching anything else. And that includes touching the sides of the autoclave, because we want as much loose area around the object for the steam to penetrate. But again, make sure you're clear on this. If you've got multiple packs, that rather than stack them like this, you want to have them sort of like a teepee. On your sheet here, it calls that vertically. Okay, so I've loaded my packs. I'm going to place this in here on the middle shelf. The next thing that I'm going to do with this machine is I'm actually going to introduce my water into the drum part of this. When you come over here, you're going to see that this knob at the very end here, this is what actually runs your cycle. And the first one that you turn to, you can always only turn it clockwise. The first one you come to, is it says fill water. So I want you to actually see this. I'm going to turn that on. And when I pull this out quickly, can you see the water is entering from the back of the autoclave there? Okay, it's coming in there. How do I know when there's enough water in here? Do you all see this line right here? That's my fill line. Make sure you're looking at it, because I had a lot of students when I was testing them last semester, they didn't know. This, as soon as that water hits that fill line, that's enough to run this cycle in here. Okay, it's coming, it's not quite there yet, and as you can see, it's not flooding, so that's good. You don't have to worry about going, and stuff flying out. I'm just waiting. As soon as it hits that fill line, which is right now, I'm going to turn to the next part of my cycle. You'll get a little bit of extra like this, but don't worry about that. So when you fill the key, this is my fill line right here. It feeds in from the back, and then when it hits that fill line, I'm going to now sterilize. Okay, I got everything I need to do this. I've got my packs in there. They're set up. I'm going to close the door and tighten the handle until it's snug. Now I want you to notice something. I can only open this door so far, but I need to seal this so that absolutely none of the steam can escape, because the steam is what's creating the pressure for me. I've got a rubber gasket on here which helps me to do that on the outside of the door. If you can't see that, come have a look. That's what's going to seal it for me. I'm going to close that, bring my tightening handle across. Whoops, it's a little bit loose there. And then I'm just going to tighten it down. Okay. Now you want to tighten this. You don't have to reef on it to tighten it, right? You want it snug. But I'm going to not take it much more than that. As soon as I have to start really pushing hard, you don't need to do that, okay? So at this point in time, I'm going to set my timer. So this is one of my other nozzles on here. Now, on this unit, it's recommended that we set it for 35 minutes for the first load, 30 minutes for the following load, which I'm going to do. Okay, so here we go. 35 is right there. Now, to sterilize an item, what temperature?
121.
Pressure? 15. Time? 9 to 15. So why would I be setting this for 35? It's cold. Okay, so it's the same principle as when you go home and you say, I feel like some McCain French fries tonight. And you look at the package and it says 425 for 10 minutes. You still got to wait for your oven to warm up. And with this unit, you actually have to wait at the end of the cycle for it to exhaust the steam out and dry. So yes, for 9 to 15 minutes, hopefully that works in there. And how will we know if it hit 121 degrees for 9 to 15 minutes? The strip inside. I will know it hit 121 as soon as I look in there and see that the stripes are across there. And if they don't, this pack's not even close to sterile. But you do want to be checking that inside one, and that's a mistake. A lot of people forget to check for that. Because if it's not sterile, I don't want it going on the animal who's in surgery. So I'm going to keep going on this, but I'm basically going to just let this run. We're going to start hearing sounds. To me, it's the sounds of like a sauna when somebody's dropping water on the rocks, and you'll hear it's starting to heat up and generate steam. But I'm going to let this run for 35 minutes. What I want to see somewhere along the way is this gauge here indicates pressure. Okay, so I want to see that this at least hits 15 pounds per square inch in this cycle. At the end of the cycle, and we'll go through this, but I want to just finish this with you because I want to move to other things and we'll just check this at the end. At the end of this cycle, what happens is my timer's going to go off, and it's that point in time where I've got to vent the steam now, sitting in here, heating this item up. I got to vent it out because if I open this door with all that steam and pressure in there, I'm not going to have a good ending. Okay, that door is going to be, it would explode open. So I've got to vent that out of there before I can open this door. And that's where this gauge is very important. I don't want to open this door until this is moved down to 0. And I'll show you that when we get there. Okay. And then we do have to dry it. Now here's the interesting thing. When you sterilize something with moist heat, what do you think that pack is going to feel like at the end of 35 minutes? It's hot and it's wet. It's going to be damp. Guess what likes damp? Bacteria, fungus. So I have to dry it. So there is a drying cycle on this, which I've got to set my machine to do. So I'm on my sterilized cycle right now. It's going to stay there for 35 minutes. When our 35 minutes is up and I hear that bell go off, I'm going to then turn it to the next part on this, which has an EXH, dry. EXH stands for exhaust. And as soon as I turn that there, you'll hear and possibly even see some of it venting out from here and from here. But this also will dry the pack out. Now it doesn't do a really good job of drying the pack out with the door closed because it's still going to be damp in there. So generally, once my pressure gauge is down to 0, I'm actually going to crack this door open a little bit for the dry cycle because that lets some of the room air rush in there and help dry that up for me. And that's it. That's the basics of running an autoclave. It's pretty easy to run. Any of you could do this with this in front of you without me even teaching it to you, but I do want you to understand the importance, of particularly the pressure gauge, because we are dealing with a dangerous piece of equipment in that we've got high heat and pressure. I'd like to think, and I don't know this for sure, I need to get a hold of the manual, I'd like to think that at the end of this cycle, there would be some sort of a safety in here that would stop you from opening this door before that pressure gauge goes down to 0. But if there's not, it's even more important for me to be telling you, make sure that's down to 0 before you crack the door open. Okay? So let's just let that start doing its thing and move to our gown wrapping and stuff like that.